Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us now is the chairman of the Republican National Committee, Reince Priebus. He joins us now from Washington. And Reince, welcome back to Newsmax TV.
Hey, thanks Kathleen for having me. Happy to be back.
According to published reports, the CIA is said to be using unprecedented polygraphing and pure intimidation to guard Benghazi secrets after dozens of CIA operatives were said to be on the ground in Benghazi at the time of the attack there. How do you view this report?
Well, I mean, it's like a continuation, Kathleen, of the same things that we've been seeing coming out of the NSA and this is an incredible balance between people's freedoms and, of course, the government's responsibility to keep people safe. But the question is, where do those two things cross, and when does government's intrusion on people's freedoms cross the line? I mean, this is a massive philosophical debate that I think is actually a good thing that we're having, not just in the Republican Party, but I think it's a good thing for our country to have. So all of this kind of hand-wringing about people having open dialogue and conversation and debate over this important issue shouldn't be seen as a negative. This is a good thing. We have to debate this stuff, and I think it's a good thing that this information comes out so that our elected leaders can look at it.
A recent Wall Street Journal NBC poll shows President Obama's approval numbers seriously underwater, with only 45% of voters happy with his performance. Now, in a speech recently, the president blamed Washington, saying it had taken its eye off the ball. Is running against Washington a viable strategy for a president 5 years into?
Well, I mean, running against Washington has always been a strategy, right? I mean, it's been happening, for probably forever. I mean, that's always a strategy. But I think what it does show is that the president is and continues to be out of touch with what it takes to be a leader in this country. There's one thing the president has done pretty well in this country, and that's having the American people judge him not by the things that he does, but the things that he says. And, he's good at talking, and we know that. He's campaigning still. And I know we've all seen that. He's running around the country campaigning. He's not running for anything, but he's campaigning because that's what he considers to be governing. He thinks governing is campaigning and community organizing. Well, once you get elected, then it's time to lead this country. And it's not easy, but you do have to sit down with the speaker, and you have to sit down with the leader in the Senate, and sometimes you have to bang some heads together. But this president's incapable of it. And that's really the issue here, Kathleen, is that this president is incapable of leading this country.
Several leading Republicans have said that they won't raise the debt ceiling unless they get spending cuts from Democrats in return. Should Republicans allow a partial government shutdown if that's what it takes to rein in spending? And along those lines, Senators Mike Lee and Ted Cruz are leading an effort in the Senate to defund Obamacare by rejecting a continuing resolution that would lead to a government shutdown. Is this wise?
Well, I think here's the thing, Kathleen. I think that there is total consensus and agreement that Obamacare needs to be defunded. Obamacare shouldn't be put in place. It should be either delayed, defunded, ended, and stopped. And I think you have total agreement within the Republican Party and a lot of Democrats now too on that issue. I mean, but what you're debating is a tactic, and tactics are things that, as chairman of the party, I don't make judgment calls on legislative tactics. While I agree we shouldn't spend a nickel of taxpayer money on Obamacare, you have to look at the tactic of shutting the government down and whether or not the tactic of that and whether that's going to be successful is worth doing it. Now, I happen to really respect Mike Lee and Ted Cruz and Rand Paul. Spent the weekend the other week with Rand and Ted in Iowa. That's not the issue. The issue is this is a debate about tactics, but you have consensus in our party that we should not be funding something that the president himself has already declared half broken. So is it wise to spend taxpayer money on a program that the president has already declared to the American people as half broken? I would say no. You should not spend money on it. But tactics are things, legislative tactics and procedural tactics are things that the Senator Cruz and Mitch McConnell and John Boehner and people like Paul Ryan have to decide. But I don't think the American people want this program. They're with us, and I think we need to drive this message home.
And turning to immigration reform now, the GOP remains divided on this one. Are you surprised that this issue has divided the party as it has? And does the GOP have to pass something this year, else risk losing Hispanic voters permanently?
You know, I know it's bizarre. I don't find it to be dividing the party. I think that what you have is a consensus in the party that we need immigration reform, and everyone agrees on that. I mean, even Rand Paul went to the National Hispanic Chamber in the middle of March and said, we need comprehensive immigration reform. Now, we know that Rand Paul's version of what that looks like is going to be different than Lindsey Graham's. But you do have consensus in the party that we need serious immigration reform. I think what you're going to see out of the Congress, and we don't know for sure, you don't, I really don't, I mean, we don't know for sure what's going to be coming out of it, but we do think that there is going to be either a series of bills or one bill that tackles serious border security, worker visas, E-Verify, and some discussion on legalization of people that are here. Maybe not necessarily citizenship, but certainly a good, strong debate over the issue of legalization. And so I think most people in the party are ready for that conversation.
And Congressman Peter King has indicated he may run for president, saying he's concerned about the GOP's drift toward isolationism. Do you share this concern, and how do you view a possible Peter?
I don't share the concern at all. These are debates. If people would just read a little history in both our party and our country, these are debates that have been going on and on and on. And so I don't find this to be anything unique. I don't find it to be even newsworthy. The fact that we would have differing opinions on foreign policy within our party, that's been going on for, I think, as long as we've had a Republican Party. So look, I think that's fine. I think we're going to have a robust primary. And if Congressman King wants to jump in, obviously that's his prerogative. But we've got a great bench. And I mean, if there's anything that you can say about the Republican Party, whether it be Steve King, Marco Rubio, Paul Ryan, or Rand Paul, I mean, we've got a great group of people that are looking at running for president. And I think that we ought to look at that as a blessing to our party.
And I know you talk about debate being healthy, but what about this very public back and forth between Chris Christie and Rand Paul, who've been engaged in a war of words in recent days? Does this kind of swiping at each other, hurt the party?
Well, I mean, certainly I would say to both these guys and the rest of the party, we don't have the luxury to divide and subtract in our party. We need to be building each other up. We need to be promoting each other and saying, look, this party's big enough for Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, Chris Christie, Paul Ryan, Steve King. I mean, we have to build a party through addition and multiplication. And I do think it's insane to be knocking each other in public, especially on television, especially in front of the same groups of media outlets that are in the business of slicing and dicing us, to use those groups in the media that would rather conquer us, to then use those groups in the media to divide us. I find that to be a seriously bad use of time and talent. But I would say that it is great that Rand and Governor Christie are going to potentially sit down and have a beer or two. And I think that obviously is what's going to happen. I'm sure these guys would get along just fine. And I'm sure they do already. But it's just a matter of how we use our time and how we decide to communicate and who we communicate to that I think in this particular case could have been an improvement.
Reince, Hillary Clinton is said to have a lock on the 2016 Democratic nomination. Do you agree with that assessment? And it's still very early, but how should the GOP campaign against her if she were to get the Democratic nod?
Well, I think she's got a lot of problems. I mean, this is a family that's, one thing they're used to is dealing with scandals. And, we've just seen the beginning of Benghazi. We're seeing the beginning of other issues that are coming out in the State Department that took place while she was there. And she's going to have to answer to these things. I mean, I don't see this as a slam dunk at all. I think they're going to actually have a pretty serious debate on their side of the aisle. And in either way, I think that Hillary Clinton is very vulnerable. And so, we're going to deal with our side of the aisle. I mean, we have to make sure that we're putting together a good primary system, a good debate process. We have a ground game at the RNC that's permanent and year-round. We get our digital and data structure set. We've got enough to do on our side of the aisle besides worry about what Hillary Clinton's going to do.
Let's chat for a second about 2014. The New York Times stats guru says the GOP may well win control of the Senate in 2014 as many popular red state Democrats retire. Is that your outlook as well?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Houses, it looks very, very strong right now. And then you look at the Senate. And the reason why, Kathleen, it looks very good for us in the Senate is that we've got about 6 states where Barack Obama didn't win 42% of the vote. I mean, if you look at Alaska, Montana, South Dakota, Arkansas, Louisiana, West Virginia, I mean, just right there, you're looking at states where Barack Obama did a terrible job in November. And so we're going to have strong candidates. We're putting a ground game in there right now to make sure that we're competitive. And that's what we need to do. So we need to take one day at a time, too, here at the Republican Party. But we also have to continue to improve, get bigger, get better, and make sure that we can capitalize in 2014 and then build even bigger to 2016, something that this party hasn't done enough of over the years.
And Reince, before you go, I'd like to get your quick take on just a few races. Wyoming Senator Mike Enzi is now facing a primary challenge from Dick Cheney's daughter, Lynn. Are you happy about this primary challenge?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me at all. I mean, I think these are healthy debates, and obviously when I was chairman in Wisconsin, Scott Walker was seriously challenged by another good member of Congress, a good conservative, and Ron Johnson had his share of opponents in the Senate. And you know, if you've got a good party structure, you've got candidates that are well trained and able to watch their mouth, stay on message, and stick to the principles of our party, I think we're going to be just fine. And especially in Wyoming. I mean, it's a red state, and one thing we know for sure is that we will have a Republican senator from Wyoming.
And Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is expected to face Kentucky Secretary of State Allison Lundgren Grimes. Does Mitch McConnell hold on to his seat?
You know, I'm sure he does. I'm not refereeing races like that, and it's certainly not my place to do it. We've got primaries for a reason. This is America. People have a right to run, and obviously Leader McConnell's been strong, and I'm sure he's taking everything very seriously and moving forward.
The Virginia governor's race, Ken Cuccinelli versus Terry McAuliffe. How do you see this playing out?
Well, I mean, Terry's in the news every day with one scandal after the next. I mean, he chose to do business in Mississippi. He basically picked Virginia because he decided he wasn't going to run in New York, and he wasn't going to run, I think he was looking at Florida or somewhere that he was going to run, and he decided not to do that, so he put a flag in the ground in Virginia and decided that he wanted to be governor in Virginia because it was where what was most convenient for him. So, you know, the difference between the two guys is that Ken Cuccinelli's got a heart for Virginia. He chose Virginia. He cares about Virginia. Terry McAuliffe chose Virginia for a political career. And, you know, he's got a lot to answer for now with his business dealings and his politics of making gazillions of dollars through his connections in politics. And I don't think that plays well in Virginia. So I feel really good about Ken and what he's done for the state and what he's going to do for the state.
All right, RNC Chair Reince Priebus, good to have you with us. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Kathleen.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.